Good morning, Anthony.
Come on, John.
Excellent. How are you this morning?
Yeah, not so bad. Got a little bit of a cold, so I hope it doesn't come across too nasally. But yeah, all good.
Excellent. Great to hear, and I hope you feel better. Hope this conversation will sort of progress your recovery from your cold, as they say. Yeah, I hope you feel better from after you've had this conversation. Excellent. So, welcome to the CTO News Thursdays. We look forward to recording your vlog episode, and it's going to be great to learn more about you as a CTO and technology leader, and also the Triad Group, which is the organization that you are currently based at. And, in the first instance, please could you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Yeah, I'm Ant. I'm the CTO at Triad Group PLC, which is a digital transformation consultancy headquartered in Godalming near Guildford in Surrey. And we've got other offices over in Milton Keynes as well.
Brilliant. Excellent. So, I've done a bit of digging, as you would expect. And I looked at your background, and in the first instance, I saw that you started your education at, I hope I'm going to pronounce this correctly, it's called Wales Dinas Bryn.
I'll help you out, John.
Yes.
Yeah, up in North Wales, place called Llangollen is my hometown, and secondary school is Ysgol Dinas Bran.
Absolutely, absolutely. And following on from there, what did you study at university?
I went to De Montfort University,
Okay.
formerly Polytechnic, and studied software engineering, so the BSc there. And I chose De Montfort really on the kit that they had. So I went around all the universities, and De Montfort had the best kit, so I'm going there.
Absolutely, absolutely. In saying that, actually, whilst I was looking at your school, I noticed that there was an individual. I think his surname is Edwards, who is representing Wales at rugby.
Yes, yeah. It's the news of the town at the moment, so fantastic.
Fantastic,
Yeah.
as it should be. Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I wish him all the best and his rugby endeavours, and let's hope he makes it to the national squad one day.
Yeah.
See him on TV representing his country. So that's really good to hear and see. Brilliant. So since 1992, you've worked for a variety of organisations, both in the private and public sector, mainly for UK government. And it'll be great just to give our audience a bit of a background with regards to your career prior to you joining Triad Group.
Yeah. So I started out, obviously left university, heavily into software engineering at the time. I started out at a company called Air Products, or Air Products and Chemicals, and they are an industrial gases company, and it was a power builder role. Power builder was still around. It was a client server technology at the time. And we were developing, or tasked with developing, order to receipt systems. So anything that involved the order taking and stock management and logistics of delivering products to their clients. I was there for sort of 4 to 5 years. And at the time, Power Builder was being heavily used in the city, so within financial services. So that was the next opportunity that came along, really, and found myself working at a company called Warburg Dillon Reed at the time. And Warburg Dillon Reed changed into UBS Warburg, which then changed into UBS. And I was there for overall about 10 years. Started out as a kind of a developer stroke BA stroke project manager on a relatively small collateral management project. That project was being brought in-house, and I worked with one of the guy there to try and get the system to work properly and do what they needed it to do. And then progressed from there really into sort of natural progression into sort of more delivery management and functional leadership, and running sort of global teams and global systems. Finally moving into fixed income at UBS, and then just at the point of the credit crunch where UBS got rid of their fixed income department. So I had a natural break from UBS just at the head of the credit crunch, and then took a few years out, which is quite pleasurable, and looked after the family, did some work on a house, those sorts of things. and then found Triad in 2015, I think it was, where I've been for the last 7.5 years.
Brilliant, brilliant. Thanks for sharing. And that's very, very concise in your description and your journey. If you don't mind me asking, so Power, will it be Power Builder?
Yeah, it's a Sybase.
Yeah, is that sure? Is that similar to or in the same sort of realms as Power Apps, or is that completely something different entity?
Yeah, no, it's a completely different technology. So Power Builder was a purely client server, so thick client Windows platform, coupled up with a Sybase backend, and it is really a really quick way of prototyping and building full systems, and centered around, I think it was called the data window, which is a sort of essentially a reporting tool that you could plonk on a front end and manipulate data, provided form entry sort of capability and like nice useful way of presenting data. And it was remarkably quick to spin up applications, and yeah, very, very much liked using it. Power Apps is more modern, so that's a Microsoft technology. Power Apps is you could kind of say it's similar. It is Power Apps is obviously a low code platform. I'd say, having looked at Power Apps and used a bit of Power Apps, Power Builder was a lot more feature rich, so you could do a huge amount more in terms of responding to events and code behind Windows, whereas Power Apps is very essentially very straightforward and simple to knock up very quick prototypes. As soon as you get into the more complex things, then you're straight into custom code and those sorts of technologies.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, great. Thanks for explaining. All right. So, what is the Triad Group?
So Triad is a digital consultancy. We define, design, and deliver digital solutions in private and public sector organisations. We've been around for 30 years, and we've changed over the course of those 30 years. From very beginnings, we had a technology product that we developed in-house. We also did a lot of contract recruitment and contract provision into other organisations, as well as having our consulting arm. And more recently, in the last sort of 5 or so years, we're focusing much more on our consultancy model. We've grown our permanent consultancy base, and we've begun to rely less on external contractors. But we still do an awful lot of recruitment for other clients, as we do in parallel with consultancy work we do with organisations like central government departments and the private sector.
Brilliant, excellent. And that quite nicely sort of leads us to the next question that I have, which is, government faces several challenges regarding software development, as an example, within that, say, for example, central government environment. Can you state what challenges that can sort of appear, whether it be from legacy systems, security, digital skill gap, budget constraints, etc.? What are the key challenges that you're seeing in central government that you're trying to address at Triad Group?
Yeah, that's a difficult one, because there's an awful lot of challenges in IT. I think if I explain it from what we see on the ground, that might give a good perspective.
Sure.
And I think you touched on the sort of digital skills gap, and I think I'd like to explain that from my perspective. It may be useful for people outside of IT to know what that digital skills gap actually means.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I think a lot of people, when you use that term digital skills gap, what people have in their minds is there aren't enough developers. There's just not enough developers in the market. To train more people.
Yeah.
What we actually see on the ground is that, but it manifests itself in a different way. So if you put into context that when we put a role out on the market, that we're trying to hire into Triad, or we're trying to fulfill a project, we'll get hundreds of applications. There are a lot of developers out there, we will get hundreds of applications. So it's not necessarily that there's a lack of developers on the market. What it is hitting that quality mark. So within Triad, for example, we have this concept of the model consultant. Model consultant is knowledgeable, inspirational, credible, and astute. So when we're looking at candidates, we're trying to marry up candidates to those attributes of the model consultant. And there's very few candidates on the market that do fit those requirements. So what you see in terms of servicing demand within the economy is, well, to be able to service that demand, people have to lower the bar. So once you lower the bar, you start to hit quality issues. So what government are going to see and are seeing are the impact of this digital skills gap being more that people are lowering the bar to entry, and that's translating through to quality issues. And if you couple that with procurement's focus on cost, again, that's putting downward pressure on that bar to entry. So I think what the digital skills gap really poses as a challenge in not just central government but everywhere is, how do you maintain quality of delivery? How do you maintain not just working code, but features that are developed around the user, putting effort into that sort of work? How do you make sure that projects are being led by suitably experienced delivery managers and those sorts of things? How do you make sure automated testing is being developed on those projects, and deployment into environments is all automated? How do you maintain that quality when you've got this kind of tension between so much demand for work and not enough skilled people to deliver it? And how do you prevent that bar from being lowered? So that's what we've tried to maintain and have maintained within Triad. In fact, we've effectively increased that bar, if you like, through our candidate recruitment process. But that challenge is out there in terms of finding good quality people.
Absolutely, and that's what I think. From what you've said, trying to have that model where you're possibly looking at possibly intangible skills as well as soft skills, and bringing that into the marketplace. But in order for central government to have those type of caliber resources or individuals, they have to lower the bar, or else they won't be able to have those pools of individuals coming in to actually select from. It's I can imagine that is an absolute challenge, because you may have, like say for example, a critical systems application for central government that requires obviously high caliber individuals, but that sort of threshold of having whether it be but the sort of the threshold of soft skills and intangible skills has to be quite high in order for that criteria to be met. And it's a challenge.
And it's not just developers, is it? The digital skills gap isn't just developers.
No.
It's everybody within a team. It's the BAs, it's the UX designers, it's, as I said, the delivery managers, it's the test automation engineers, the DevOps engineers.
Sure.
It's trying to fulfill all of those at the right level, because one weak link within that team could create all sorts of trouble down the line, couldn't it? And it might not transpire in what you see in terms of the product from the outside. As a user, it might be okay. Maybe there's a resilience problem or a security problem embedded in that system somewhere as a result of that weak link. So it's a challenge for us, because we do set the bar quite high. So naturally it narrows that pool of individuals that you've got to pick from. And it's also a challenge in terms of a lot of the work we go in to do is remediation of problems. So, if a client's got a particular problem with inefficient CI/CD pipelines, then that's the sort of thing we would go in and help them with. If the client's got a problem with test automation, maybe they haven't got test automation, it's the sort of thing we go in and help with. And then we've talked with you in the past about sort of legacy systems. So obviously legacy systems are out there that become legacy, partly due to age, but often you can find new legacy systems, can't you, that have just been developed poorly and they become legacy rather quickly. So the other sort of area we go in and help clients with.
Absolutely, absolutely. No, very, very true. Brilliant. Well, that then leads us to, and I've read about this and I just love to know more about it. What is Triad's Agile Playbook, and what do you believe, or what would you state is your organization's USP that you're offering to the central government and those types of organizations out there in the marketplace?
Yeah, that's a difficult question, John, because I think about it in terms of what can Triad bring to Agile.
Yes.
Scrum was born in the early 90s, and Agile has been the way to do things for at least the last 15 years outside of the core tech industry. Normal companies have been using Agile for 15 years plus. So what is it that we do differently? And it's difficult to say exactly what we do differently. I think it comes down to probably the discipline. There's rules, there's ways of working, there's all of the fun stuff we talk about in Agile. But I guess what we see on the ground that's different to others, it is the discipline and the rigor that we put into our teams, because it's very hard to develop good quality code.
Yeah.
It's very hard to develop features that actually make the user's life easier. It's not just a feature that does something. It's got to be something that it's going to be intuitive to the user, right?
Yeah.
It's very hard to do that whilst also creating a resilient, secure, scalable system. Those are things that are difficult to do, and I think by instilling that sort of discipline within our teams, they follow those rules, and it's important to us that you're working at pace within those sort of 2-week sprints, and you're incorporating user feedback into the work you're doing, and that you're continuously keeping on top of that test automation, and you are automating the deployment, and you're not introducing some of those sort of legacy traits of manual interventions, and perhaps not engaging your users as much as you should be doing. So I think our USP is probably, and obviously that drives the quality that I talked about earlier. I think our USP is probably around that discipline, and how we make sure that's happening within the team, the organisation.
Absolutely. Do you know that resonates really well, because I had a conversation with a CTO that's worked in the would it be social housing sector, and we had a similar conversation, but he was suggesting that governance was the key sort of driving force that sort of keeps everything together, but within that governance has to be flexibility. And it sounds as though that you're leaning towards that in more ways than one, but there is obviously, for central government, you may not have the room for flexibility, because it's such a will it be stringent way of working in those environments. So yeah, completely resonates. And it's been experienced in other areas.
It can be it can be quite stringent, but I think what we've seen from working in multiple the central government departments, they all do it slightly differently. They all have their sort of different governance processes. Obviously, the likes of the GDS assessment and the service manual approach.
Yeah,
it's some sort of normality across all the departments, but people do deliver differently in each of those departments. So governance is important. I mean, the way we do it, I mean, we like to self-govern. The teams should be self-organising to a certain extent. We are a consultancy, so we have a slightly different approach to delivering with agile teams. We have a delivery manager, and we don't just have a scrum master. So we do have someone responsible for the delivery and guiding the team and providing direction. Teams are largely self-governing, but what we do is internally we layer on top of that our own internal governance. So there'll be the likes of me and our so as a director and managing director have regular meetings with those teams just to help guide the team as a whole and the leadership of that team, because we've obviously seen lots of this lots of sorts of problems you see on delivery projects in the past anyway from experience. So it's useful to have that that sort of governance just guiding, sort of light touch every now and again, saying, well, okay, have you considered this? What's going to happen here? That sort of thing, just to provide some direction. And then obviously on the client side internally, each of those departments have their own governance process as well to make sure projects are delivering to a plan.
Brilliant. Yeah, no, absolutely agreed. No, absolutely makes sense. Okay, so please can you give some examples of successful client projects you've been involved with at Triad Group, please?
The project I've been involved with for quite a long time now at DFT is my favourite example, just because I've been involved with it. I'm obviously not involved with every project at Triad, but DFT's a long-term client of ours, and we've become experts in a particular piece of legislation to do with road transport fuels. So that was quite an interesting project, because that was a legacy system, and there's still a legacy system in place actually. But what we've been tasked to do was to create a direct replacement for that system. So it's always difficult, because how do you in an agile way, how do you deliver a new product that's a minimum viable product when you've got an existing product that's got everything in it, and bring the client and the users along with you. So that's obviously quite a challenge to do, because naturally when you're delivering an agile way, you don't want to deliver all of those features again, because some of them just don't get used very often. So it's been going on for about 18 months, this project. We've delivered it into production now in January. It's running in parallel for a period of time. But that's a really good example of user-centered design. I think that it's such a huge step forward for them in terms of how they work with the legislation and how they deliver their sort of compliance needs on the DFT side. It's also a big change for the end users who are fuel suppliers in the UK. And those guys are they have a difficult job in itself, adhering to the legislation, working with the numbers. So we've tried to make it as easy as possible for them in that respect. But what we did was we had them part and parcel of our team. So we've had the likes of, I can't name all of the fuel suppliers, but the big fuel suppliers. We've had them within our regular meetings every 2 weeks. We've been working with them directly, testing wireframes, testing front end features, and any proof of concept continuously for 18 months now, and it's been fantastic. They've been, those sorts of companies being really engaged in software development from day one, and they've fed back really positively from that as well, in that they've known they've been able to influence how the product takes shape. And for a company to be able to work with government and then influence how a service that they're going to have to use takes shape, that you can see why they're so pleased with the outcome. So I think for me that's my favourite project, partly because I'm biased, because I've been involved with it, but partly because it's just a great example of user-centered design, and it's exactly what government are trying to achieve across the board, is this focus on the user, and making sure you're not just delivering a feature that somebody's asked for, but it's a feature that it's going to be intuitive to them, it's easy to use, it does what they need it to do, and it takes some of the load off them in terms of understanding what this complex legislation needs to do.
So, Anthony, what was the initial spark? What was the initial interest that made all the various fuel suppliers come together to have, whether it be bi-weekly wireframe sessions and demos with you?
Well, I guess it's legislation that they have to deal with, so they had no choice in using the system. But what was the initial spark? I mean, we reached out to every one of the users. It's a relatively small base of 70 odd organisations to use the system. So we reached out to every single one of them, explained, this is how we develop, because these guys aren't IT in the IT industry. These are just end users who are knowledgeable about fuel, also knowledgeable about IT systems. So we reached out and said, explained on day one, so this is how we develop software and how we deliver systems, and here are the advantages to you of being involved in the process. Would you like to be involved? And we had overwhelmingly positive response saying, yeah, love to be part of this. I'm already using a legacy system that's really difficult to use. I'd like to be part of working on a new system with you guys. So it was overwhelmingly positive, and we've had every single sprint review, every 2 weeks, the last 18 months, we've had a significant population of that user community attending the sprint reviews and seeing what the latest feature is that we've developed, being able to feed back, and then just being part of that process. So I think the spark was perhaps they hadn't been given the opportunity in the past to contribute to a new product being developed. I don't think many of them, if any of them, had been part of that process before. So I think it was, people are naturally curious, aren't they? They like to learn things. So I think
absolutely
giving people the opportunity to learn something new, be part of something different,
sure
worked for us.
Absolutely. And I think also it seems as though that you probably would have had like your senior stakeholders, your possibly mid-level stakeholders, and your foot soldiers, for example, who would all potentially come in at various different stages of the development of the application, just to see what's going on and to provide their input. And I think that's really great. I think that's a really good way of doing it. In terms of it provides a full sort of collaboration environment for all the stakeholders involved in any given environment at local government or senior government level.
And that's really important. We always talk about transparency, don't we? Agile. What's important is that there's from the get-go, there's going to be problems on any project. Anything to do with IT is always going to take longer. It's always going to be more difficult. You're always going to find trouble, and it's bringing people along with you throughout that project, so that they're part of the decision making when you hit those sorts of issues, and they're involved in it, and that just makes delivery much more collaborative and easier than the old way of here you go, here's a product, and, I don't like it.
Very true. Brilliant. Okay, so what do you do to stay current with technology?
I still tinker, John. I can't stop myself. I mean, my day job is very varied. A CTO in a consultancy is probably very different to a CTO in a product development company or a company developing its own internal software. So I'm involved in an awful lot of different aspects of the business itself. But I always find the time to tinker. And yesterday I shouldn't say this, but yesterday I was tinkering with our Shiny. I thought, well, I could do something with that. So the way I go about doing it, I will have a tinker. I probably won't deliver anything with it, but what it'll show me is what is the learning curve for this technology? How long is it going to take someone to get up to speed? Is it something that actually we can confidently supply services with that technology because all of our guys are so experienced they'll be able to pick up really quickly, or is it something that's actually that's going to take an awful lot of learning, training, and experience to get proficient in? That's something we should hire someone in for and augment our teams with an additional hire, for instance. So I tinker on a daily basis, and that helps me, helps inform how we go about tackling the new technology.
Brilliant, excellent. Tinkering is always the way, and it's great to hear that you're trying to foresee what challenges your team members potentially could have, and looking at how you might be able to address that prior to setting them the challenge as well. So, very good, excellent. So, which technology then most interests you?
I'm not going to say AI and ML because everybody would say AI and ML, and I'm not. I shouldn't say this either. I'm not that interested at this point in time in AI and ML. There'll be a point where we see the demand, or the demand is close enough to us to take advantage of it, but we're not quite there yet. I think in general terms, although it's not a technology, automation is the thing that interests me, and I think from early days of writing code, you're writing code to deliver something that automates a job or automates a task, aren't you? And that, for me translates into nowadays we're talking about automation of deployments, automation infrastructure as code, automation of tests. Those sorts of technologies really interest me. I like to see, something that was once manual turned into a process. So I have done a bit of Terraform as I like to tinker, and I have done a bit of test automation as I like to tinker.
Yeah,
those are the things that do excite me.
brilliant. Okay, those are interesting technologies, and Terraform is another one of those areas that absolutely generates interest. Brilliant. So, what is your superpower? What would you say is your superpower? Do you have a superpower?
Yeah. What's my superpower? I think I think I'm probably seen as quite a calm person. I don't react and respond quickly to panic. I think that's probably from years of looking after systems in production. You kind of learn to take a step back and you just not react immediately to a developing situation. So I think probably most people would say I'm quite calm, level-headed, and considered.
Brilliant. Absolutely amazing. Once again, that's a trait that most CTOs have. Being calm under pressure and being able to see the wider field is absolutely a great trait. Brilliant. Okay, so what do you do outside of work? And once again, this is another question that I've been waiting to learn more about. Can you tell me more about Huckleberry's Nature Farm CIC, please?
Thanks, John. So outside of work, I tinker. I'm also an Explorer Scout leader. I've been a Scout leader for several years now. So I enjoy the outdoors, and that kind of comes from being born up in North Wales and actually being raised on an outdoor pursuits centre just outside Llangollen. The other thing you mentioned, Huckleberry's Nurture Farm, is it's a community interest company that my wife and I we brought in another director, set up about 4 years ago, and that's a CIC. So we target children sort of primary school age who don't benefit from funding, and we seek the funding from the likes of, we're supported at the moment by the National Lottery Fund, which is fantastic, and a number of other local funders as well, and we provide then the sort of therapeutic care to those primary school children free of charge to the school, and free charge to the child. So it's a nurture farm. We coined the phrase nurture farm 4 years ago, and what that means is we developed a farm around children as opposed to having a farm, which are called care farms, having a farm and using the farm to support children. So we kind of centered it around. It was a centered design almost, isn't it? We centered it around the child and developed the farm around that child. So we have a number of small animals, and we use sort of trauma-informed techniques and mindfulness techniques to just help with resilience and help people find a place that they can be me is our sort of catchphrase, and just try and help them to get back into school in some cases, and just fulfill their potential later on in life.
Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. I'm all for anything that helps children, especially those who are either vulnerable or need that that support that's not necessarily there for them. So it's great to learn more about Nurture Farm and the support that you're providing to those children. Yeah,
absolutely. And we keep small animals for those sorts of reasons. Although we are on a site that also has some lovely cattle, so they do get to see the cattle as well.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, Anthony, thank you very much for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure learning more about yourself, learning more about your journey, and also learning more about Triad and the services that you're providing for local government. The way that you're introducing Agile, the way that you're looking to find additional resources for local environments that require those resources, and the importance of having a skill set available, or making a skill set available for resources that are either heavy on soft skills, and they absolutely do have those intangible skills as well. And also great to learn about, you know, your Huckleberry Farm, Nurture Farm. It's because it's got nurture, you feel that you want to say nature, but it's nurture.
Absolutely.
You know, but yeah, it's been absolutely great. Please let me hand over to you.
Thank you, John. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and look forward to catching up in the future as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you very much, Anthony, and we look forward to all your successes and speaking with you soon.
Thank you.